Hi, good afternoon. I'm Linda Kenney Baden. As you know, here at the Law and Crime Network, we are covering two trials. This morning, the trial of Grant Amato started in Florida. He faces the death penalty for killing, allegedly, according to the state, 3 of his family members, his mother, his dad, his brother, brutally, and then, according to the state, trying to blame it on his dead brother. While they're in court right now, but they are playing some body cam footage, we're actually going to talk about our other trial. As you know, we've been covering for the last 11 days the case in Georgia, up the coast from Florida, of the killing, murder, according to the state, of little Laila Daniels. She allegedly was killed by her foster parents, Joseph and Jennifer Rosenbaum. We are in the defense case today, but they're on a little bit of a break also. So we're going to review with you how we got there, what happened when Laila was brought to the emergency room after she allegedly choked on a chicken finger, according to her foster mom, Jennifer. Okay, here on Law and Crime, we have a prop, as you know. Okay, so this is an older dog called Patty Playpal. I'm told I bought her this weekend as a prop. She is a child. She has what would be a liver down over here, somewhere over this way, and she has a pancreas, which is behind, really behind her stomach and all. This is a baby, okay? What this medical examiner just said is that there's bruising, there is a torn pancreas, which could be from a knee. It could be, by the way, and we know that there was kneeing of this child because the grandmother told us there was kneeing of the child. And it could be, and you're gonna see the grandmother right now do it. Imagine just kneeing this doll that I have in front of me, kneeing her, kneeing her, kneeing her. There you go, again, kneeing her. Or maybe on her back, maybe it's a stamp. Maybe it's a boot stamp. So I'd like to bring my guests in, Ashley Willcott and Joseph Tully. Ashley, you deal with children abuse. Children are abused all the time. I find this case compelling. What say you?
Oh, I completely agree with you. And unfortunately, in my world, right, in this world of abuse and neglect, it often is by people that may look like us or may sound like us, or you may think they're stand-up citizens. Guess what? Anybody can be guilty of abusing a child if they've done it. It doesn't matter what you think of these defendants. And in this case, I think the evidence is very strong, very compelling that this child was beaten to death.
Well, let me go to Joseph Tully. Joseph, you defend people, and we'll talk about your book later. You have a namesake here. The defendant is Joseph Rosenbaum. How many times, though, has he been mentioned in the prosecution's case? In other words, can you tell me who did the stamp to my little friend, okay? Who did it? Who beat her?
Well, I think the defense for the husband in this equation will be that the wife did it and he didn't know it. He might have been neglectful, but that he was not responsible for it. That's the only avenue for the defense to take. And I don't know that there's a lot of evidence pointing towards the husband that he actually did it.
Well, you know what? But still, somebody had to do this, Joseph. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching an abuse of whether it be a doll or a baby or an animal, don't you have a duty to report it to someone or to stop it at least?
Well, I think as a foster parent, you have ethical duties, moral duties. And I think that, again, the defense is going to point out that if the wife was doing this, she was obviously fooling CPS. If she could fool CPS, why wouldn't she be able to fool her husband, who is maybe blinded by love or doesn't have the technical expertise that the CPS people would have?
You know, we have so much to talk about, both of these cases, especially this case. I wouldn't treat my doll, Patty Playpal, the way allegedly little Laila was treated. But after the break, we'll talk a little bit about the other foster child, Millie. So stay tuned here at the Law and Crime Network. Well, that was Kimberly Del Rosario. She was called by the defense to help the defense. Allegedly, she never saw the children complain or have any injuries on them. But Ashley Willcott, just real quickly, let me ask you, because you're a juvenile court judge, deals with all sorts of child abuse in Georgia. I mean, she didn't help the defense very much, did she?
No, she didn't. And really, to me, who cares if she didn't see it? She only saw them a handful of times. And when she saw them, she doesn't even remember if one had on a cast or not, or a broken arm or not. So, Linda, one person not seeing everything, remembering everything, does not convince me there was no child abuse occurring.
And Joseph Tully, you're in California, but you're watching this just as all of our people are watching, and our viewers in the chat room and all over the United States. What does an abuser look like?
An abuser looks like anybody. Anybody can be an abuser. Nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors. And I think that's actually the point that got reinforced, which is good for the prosecution in this case.
And it looked like Ms. Del Rosario was very upset, wasn't she, Ashley? This is the first time she saw the pictures, right?
Yeah, I can promise as a foster parent, she didn't want to be there testifying. And she already pointed out she's a mandated reporter. She didn't see anything. If she did, she would have reported. Now she has to come relive and see these horrific pictures of children. When she fosters, she's committed to being a foster parent herself. I'm sure it was devastating. It
had to be absolutely devastating. And Joseph, while the other witness is just being sworn in and giving his initial credentials, really quickly, if a person sees children 5 times over, like, a 4-month period, that doesn't mean abuse doesn't happen, does it?
Correct. I don't think this witness did anything. It might show the desperation of the defense. This is all they got.
Okay, so let's go back into the court. There's a new witness on the stand. Let's listen. It's for the defense. Charles Downey, a Fulton County government worker, is on the stand. He's actually on redirect, and he's been testifying as to what he observed between the interaction between Jennifer and the 2 girls, Laila and Millie. Ashley, Judge Ashley Willcott, when we were on break, you were very upset with this testimony, a question that was asked about whether or not he believed abusers abuse in public. Why?
Because abusers can abuse anywhere, and that's so speculative. Unless there's some expert, I don't think any lay witness can say, oh, they don't abuse in public or they do abuse in public. Child abusers can happen anywhere, anytime, by anyone, period.
Well, let me just ask Joseph Tully. Joseph, these girls were fostered, starting in the summer. So Mr. Downey, who's a very nice man, it appears, telling what he knows, saw them in August and then probably in September, but he didn't see them in October and November. That makes a difference here, doesn't it?
It does. Trust me, the prosecutor is going to ream the defense during closing for this reason.
Well, we did hear Mr. Downey finish it up, didn't we? Basically, Mr. Downey was called because he did witness interaction between Jennifer and her daughters when she brought them to a commission meeting and once in August. But here, let me ask my guest, let me ask Judge Ashley Willcott. Judge Willcott, you and I both have done child abuse cases. I ran I was assigned to the child abuse unit when I was a prosecutor. Abusers can abuse behind the scenes in public anywhere, right?
Right, absolutely. And yes, is it seemingly less common to happen in public? Sure, but somebody who is going to hit, beat, abuse their children doesn't necessarily have the ability to control those emotions and only do it in private. The other thing I have to say is they are very good at hiding what they've done, covering up an arm if it's broken. Domestic abuse victims, women, if they've been hit in the face, often wear sunglasses because the perpetrator is not just physically abusing them, they're also emotionally abusing them, be it a spouse or be it a child, so that person hides what happened to them at the hand of their caretaker or spouse.
Well, Joseph Tully, one of the things that interested me is, and the medical examiner testified yesterday, they talked about the liver of the deceased child, Laila. And it turns out there had been a prior incident because the liver showed signs of a prior healing situation, what they call macrophages going into it, and then a subsequent laceration that was acute, which means it just happened. That hurts Jennifer, doesn't it? Because she was at home with the kids.
It certainly does. The prosecution's got a very good case here. That they've not only got strong evidence, but they've got a very sympathetic victim. A helpless, defenseless child, you don't get more, sympathetic than that.
Well, let's go back into court because the defense is going on with another witness and going into their case. Okay, so what happened on cross there is the prosecution wanted to know how long it took for Joseph to arrive at his place of work, and it would be, he first said 30 minutes and then he corrected himself, about 45 minutes, which means that Joseph would have had to leave his house about 5 o'clock, maybe a little bit beforehand if you want to talk about having time cards and walking into work and getting there, et cetera, et cetera. And now we are going to a sidebar, which may indicate to me that maybe the defense is done with their witnesses for the day because they're going very, very quickly. I'd like to bring my guest in real quickly on this issue. I had a question exactly, about Joseph Rosenbaum, Joseph Tully, my guest for the day. I put down, where is Joseph in all these? Now, do you know what time the incident occurred that supposedly the little girl was choking?
I don't know the exact time. It was November 17th when the mother called, or the foster mother called 911 to report.
Okay. And we know, Ashley, from the medical examiner that this child would have been in distress and had these issues within an hour. And I know from my own medical examiner, who's my husband, who said the child would have been in distress fairly early, within 20 minutes, because the acid from the pancreas would have been all over her body. She wouldn't have been able to eat. So where is Joseph in all this? I guess that's what the defense is trying to prove, that he may not have been around to cause these injuries, right?
Right, I agree with you, Linda. And here's what I've said since the beginning of this case. The job for the prosecution is they've got to prove the chronological time frame, not just within dates and when did people see the children without injuries, but also within time frames on that day, like you just pointed out, because we all know Joseph wasn't there physically when it happened. Everybody knows that. So the question becomes, did he know about what happened? Did he play any role? Should he have known? I stand by my personal opinion, not that it's been put out there as the theory of the case, but I believe truly this man knew what she was doing to these children. And I also believe in my heart, based on my experience on the bench with child abuse and neglect, that she was abusive to both of these children.
Well, Ashley and Joseph, we have to go back in the courtroom. There's another witness on the stand, but I would point out the prosecution, Ashley, has to prove your feelings beyond a reasonable doubt. Let's see what the defense does to discount that. You know, when a defense calls, and I'm a defense attorney, when defense calls witnesses, they're doing their best. Mr. Dunlap, who's a teacher, who's the husband of Cindy, who testified early, said he hadn't seen bruises. But here, Ashley Willcott, quickly, I see the last persons that testified really were around September, and this happened November 17th. So if the medical examiner said there were at least two incidents within like 2 months, maybe 60 days, maybe 30 days, that doesn't put anybody in the clear, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, I feel like these are basically character witnesses to say at some point in time, individuals saw these children and they didn't appear to have been abused. But in the time frame that you're looking at, completely agree, Linda, nobody's there to testify, hey, in those 60 days, 30 days before, they weren't bruised or marks or broken bones.
Well, you know what? We are going to take a hard break pretty soon, but I'd just like to point out this is being represented, Joseph, by the same attorney. I see as a defense attorney a lot of missed opportunities for cross-examination here, something I'll get with my guest later on to discuss. But you also have a child, Laila, who has significant injuries at least twice, maybe more. Anyhow, here at Law&Crime Network, we have to take a quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back more with two trials, Rosenbaum and Amato.